A Theory from the Inside, Part 3, or The Treasury of Happy Accidents. Sometimes my mistakes turn into interesting music because I do things that aren't supposed to be done. Ziggy Marley. Despite admitting that music theory is a mixed approach, I've tried to maintain generally the claim that the way we get music, where it comes from or how it comes, all that we try to summarize in the phrase, the creative process, is distinctly different from an after-the-fact conceptual analysis we might try to satisfy ourselves with intellectually. But you may have good reason to doubt this. After all, music comes about and is written in so many different ways. Don't some artists sometimes, perhaps even consistently, apply their conceptual knowledge of music to the task of writing? And don't writers sometimes sit down and say, let's have a 2-5-1 here? Or, unsatisfied with a closing chorus, say to themselves something like, let's keep this last repeat from getting dull, let's kick the whole thing up a major second and change keys on the way out. Isn't there, in fact, a conversation between our conceptual knowledge of music and our wordless inner experience that moves the whole creative enterprise forward? Are theory and composition really so different? Having hopefully characterized what might be a reasonable objection, let me try to offer a good reply. To defend in this episode my idea that getting music, writing it, is somehow dominantly interior and markedly different from strictly conceptual ideas about music, I want to talk about mistakes. The mistakes we make can be gold. I watched an interview with a producer the other day who said he immediately apologized when he turned on a particular effect. All the knobs were cranked. But before he could dial it back to reasonable, everyone clamored to stop him. The guitar sound was magic. The mistake was gold. Everyone knew it, and that's what made the album. It's one, I guess, of many such anecdotes. Some involve sound, others wrong notes, designated as such for being non-diatonic maybe, or simply deviating in some unlikely way from the written part. There's a whole history in popular music of the mistakes we kept, a treasury of happy accidents. But now comes the question. Here it is. How did we know to keep those mistakes? If the knobs on the effect, to the best of that producer's knowledge, were set, quote, wrong, how did they know it was so right? And if the effect were dialed down to a more reasonable range, a closer to correct range, how would we know it was wrong or at least appreciably inferior? For every golden mistake, there must be 100 mistakes of tin, mistakes that really should be discarded. But where is the jeweler who sorts the tin from the gold? On what basis? What in us knows what to keep? The question's interesting because we're talking about cases where our strictly conceptual knowledge of what should or shouldn't work doesn't reliably tell us what does. Yes, songs are written many ways. And yes, music theory is used in writing music. However, wherever our ideas come from, and they come in from every conceivable direction, they are all in some sense auditioning. Likely or unlikely, haphazardly improvised or cunningly planned, they are auditioning for the part, here at a tryout that our own ears will adjudicate. Somehow we will know. Take, for example, the proposed 2-5-1. It's here at the tryout, reliably employable. It usually gets the part. Often a jazz cadence, but always the consummate professional, known to bring us home with decisive finality, but in this case, in this context, for some reason, it sounds boring. And even if I do use it, should I arrange it like this or like that? The musical circumstances are complex. What tells me what to do? Wait a minute now. Here comes another candidate for the same part. These are meant to be closed auditions. It's an unlikely and unknown cadence that's crashed our tryouts. Some oddball stumbling in off the street who says he needs a job. It's the flat 3 to 5 to 1. Unlikely, yes. But isn't this the same cadence that surprised everyone in the George Harrison song Something? E flat to G to C. Let's at least hear him. So long as it seems necessary to prioritize knowing directly the effect that music has on us over what we think we can conceptually know about what should or shouldn't work, in writing music, we will always have a defining, peculiar, dominating allegiance to whatever in us does know and adjudicates, to something more fundamental than adherence to conceptual rules, or on the other hand, to obvious deviation from those rules, since a novel deviation also may or may not work, on a basis deeper than the fact that it's apparently novel. What makes the creative process so necessarily distinctly interior, so direct, so different from the conceptual insights of music theory, is not then that we do not use music theory in writing. Rather, it is that when we do get our ideas from theory, or anywhere, we are still listeners. We make adjustments, maybe a different chord here. This isn't right. Then we notice something else. It's too thin. Or the secondary dominant here, it should work, but it sounds old-fashioned. We work with the rules because we notice they work. Then break those same rules in a way that works. Our conceptual framework is helpful, but is itself adjusted, modified by something we know further in than the conceptual framework itself can reliably ratify. Why can't theory just dictate prescriptively and point directly to predictable effects? Why this deeper, prioritized layer of inner knowing? Here's my feel for an answer. Because of the complexity of every instance of a specifically realized musical circumstance, whose effect in experience sums to everything all at once, we can never reliably draw a straight line from intentionally generalized conceptual principles like tension and release, or isolated harmonic generalities like the 2-5-1, which, for example, excludes melody, instrumentation, register, voicing, mics, inflections, part writing, acoustic space, tempo, on and on. We can't hope to point from these fractious and general concepts to specific felt effects, to particular direct meanings. These we must know and relate to directly. However helpful or occasionally unhelpful theory might be, something more specified, interior, attuned, and ongoingly conversant must be attended to in writing music. And let's be serious. Could the opening melodic line of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, let's describe it provisionally as vast or wistful, full of dreaming, longing, what? Could that really have been written if conceived simply as a stack or sequence of intervals held for specified durations? A440, A880, etc. What kind of ongoing conversant knowing was needed to write it, that in a theory from the inside could be somehow known in analysis? And in what way known? Music's meaning is precise in its way, but what words access this knowable precision? What must we be ongoingly conversant with, not just to satisfy ourselves with talk and objective concepts up the octave, down to the leading tone, etc., but to actually know it as it was to someone who knew it in the process of writing, as we perhaps have it when we hear it with simple, guileless receptivity. How does our language relate to music, to this stranger language, inarticulate and specified?
Chubby checker in a grudge match minuet. Fat strides up like a walking bass line in his right hand, the triplet. Chubby brings down the elbow. Fatty didn't see that coming, I bet. Then some Slim Jim tries to break it all up. He gets snapped like a cigarette. His eye is on the sparrow who loves the small and great. But there's something in me all my life, it says,